What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be checking out most of Britain's parliament is not elected. Meet the Lords. So obviously we're going to be exploring something about the House of Lords and probably how the Lords become the Lords. This is something I've never looked into, guys. We did in the past few months check out a video kind of touring the House of Lords.
Yeah, like inside the chambers.
Right. Beautiful building, by the way. But we really haven't explored exactly what the Lords do and honestly how the Lords become the Lords. I find this really interesting how it says most of Britain's parliament is not elected. And so while I thought the House of Lords was probably very similar to our Senate here in the U.S., if most of them aren't elected, that would mean that there were probably quite a few differences, which I can't imagine how that works, how the Lords in general wouldn't be elected. Surely they're not talking about all the Lords.
Here in the UK, you might think that we live in a democracy because, after all, we have elections and we get to vote. But that's only one side of the story. In fact, over there in the House of Parliament, the majority of politicians have not actually been elected. So in this video, I'm going to investigate the House of Lords.
I know,
Does
right?
it still have a place in the 21st century? Or is it just a club for posh old men and rich elites?
The media have a caricature of the House of Lords. They always show the picture of the peers in their robes at the opening.
The wigs.
You really couldn't make this stuff up. It belongs in the Harry Potter movie, not in the House of Parliament.
I'm on my way to meet a British politician who sat in Parliament for 48 years. That means that he's seen 9 prime ministers and 12 elections. But here's the thing, in all that time, the British public have never actually voted for him to be there.
That's
Welcome
crazy.
To the Earl of Selborne.
Earl of Selborne. That does blow your mind a little bit. Like, I am already on, like, think that they overstay their welcome in Washington, D.C.
Seriously.
Because they make a whole career out of it.
Yeah.
I think there should definitely be term limits.
Yes.
But then the fact that on top of that, they're not even elected, in the UK anyway, that just...
I know. How does that work, guys? Like, what? I guess we're going to find that out, but I just can't imagine. So you don't have to be elected. So who decides who becomes a lord?
Maybe it's all about the family you're born into.
That's crazy. Wow. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think there should be term limits. I definitely think that we have, power, at least in the US, and I'm guessing you guys have the same issue in the UK, power is in the hands of very few, and the longer they're in, the more they become part of this, like, swamp. That's what we kind of describe it as here.
Greedy, they sell out to lobbyists. And...
Versus if you didn't have this, weren't able to make this massive career from this, you would...
There wouldn't be as much incentive.
No, like I think you should get paid well while you're there.
Fair wage.
But you should serve your term or your 2 terms, your 6 years, your 8 years, whatever it is, and then you should go back into the private sector. We could get fresh blood in there continuously.
New ideas. Yeah.
But anyway, let's continue.
I like the property.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wonder how much they make.
Hello.
Oh, I do wonder that.
Palmer. But officially, he's called the Earl of Selborne. He's part of the British nobility who have inherited their elite names and privileges over hundreds of years.
Nobility.
Now he's aged 79 and he spends most of his time here on his 6,000-acre estate in the south of England.
6,000 acres?
We can live with badgers. That's not a problem.
We're looking for a badger poo right now.
Badger poo.
This is a badger latrine.
And how much of this land do you own? Or how far does it go out?
Not to the horizon, but it goes about a mile in that direction.
Okay. As a member of the House of Lords, he's been able to have a say on almost every new law that's been brought in, from crime to Brexit, banking, the health service, and even the British Armed Forces. In 1971, your grandfather died, and that's when you then became a hereditary lord. So how does that work?
Hereditary.
I had to write to the Clerk of Parliament, and I had to show my birth certificate and the death certificate for my grandfather, and I was duly, therefore, then a member of the Lords.
That's crazy.
That seems very unfair.
I mean, it does. I mean, that's just us looking in. Obviously, you guys are used to this, so it's something that a lot of you probably don't even think about. It's just normal. But like, looking from the outside, it's just like, so just because the guy was born into a certain family, he gets to literally sit up there and make laws for everybody. No matter what he's like, no matter what his beliefs are.
Maybe, I mean, he might be a great guy, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general, what if you're a really horrible person and just because you're born into this line of
That's
lords?
crazy. Wow, it's 6,000 acres? So I wonder, we were recently seeing that where like a lot of the nobility, or what do you call them, noble families? I can't think of what exactly you call the families that are very wealthy or whatnot, have a lot of land. But a lot of them have a ton of land, but then they don't actually have as much money as they look like because it's all in
the
land and
Toffs
property.
or whatever.
The Toffs, yeah, that was what it was.
So what's going on? When people talk about the UK's Houses of Parliament, they're normally talking about the House of Commons. That's where the Prime Minister goes every week to answer questions from other political parties.
Every
But
week.
Parliament actually has two chambers. The other one is the House of Lords, and that's where the Earl of Selborne is. Members of the House of Lords are often known as peers, and there's almost 800 of them in total.
Now you can spot one of these peers a mile off, because they go by these ancient titles like Earl, Baroness, Duke, and Viscount. And out of all 800 of them, none of them have been elected by us.
That's crazy, man.
There are three main ways you can become a peer in the House of Lords. The most common way is to be appointed as a life peer. Another way to get into the House of Lords is to become a bishop. There are 26 seats reserved especially for the Church
bishop?
of England. And finally, you can get a seat in Parliament just by, well, inheriting it from your parents.
Okay, so none of them are elected, but only one sect of them are like inherit their seat. The others are like somebody gives them that ability to have that seat. And are they all for life? I mean, I guess they are all for life. So that's kind of interesting because here,
No, the guy they were just talking about, he was 79.
yeah, but he's probably his grandson or somebody might take it over at this point.
Right.
I don't know.
I'm saying they don't. Well, I mean,
No, but I'm
he
saying
could, maybe.
he probably could. It sounds like he could stay as long as he
I wonder
wanted
if
to.
there are like term limits on that.
I don't think so. I mean, he said peerage for life or something earlier, didn't it?
Oh,
I don't know. But, like here, we have a lot of issue with people not liking the fact that our 9 Supreme Court justices have lifetime terms. So like, I can't imagine 800 people.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Wow.
By the way, I'm glad we watched the class video.
Yeah,
Because this
yeah.
helps me understand a little bit better, like the nuances.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, there's House of Lords and House of Commons. Well, remember, Common was like just a regular
That's true.
person.
But I mean,
So I wonder if that's.
well,
or
I
if it
mean,
means just something else.
those guys that are elected into the House of Commons, they could be just regular people. So
So that's what I'm saying. I wonder if that's what that name.
yeah, let us know in the comments, why is it called the House of Commons? And well, I guess I can understand why this is called the House of Lords.
And that's how the Earl of Selborne got in. He's one of 92 hereditary peers
92.
who were
Okay.
born into a ruling establishment class.
So not all of them,
and
92.
given powerful positions in Parliament.
And I've been a hereditary peer by an accident of birth, and I think that I've made a contribution, but I have no case for saying that hereditaries have any more expertise than anyone else.
So if you had been elected at various elections during that time, how would that have changed what you would have spoken about?
Remember, you see, an MP is elected by his constituency, and they are always thinking about the next election. But in the Lords, you're not responding to those immediate pressures. You can take a step back, and you can sometimes promote issues which wouldn't necessarily be very popular for your constituents.
It's true.
When it comes to the rather boring nitty-gritty of trying to win an election, I'm afraid I've rather lost interest.
Over the years, there have been calls for the House of Lords to be reformed. But is being undemocratic really so bad? And if so, what can be done about it? To find out, we need to dig a little deeper.
If you are writing the laws of the country that you want the citizens to live under, then the citizens should have a say in who you are. I think the hereditary peers have literally had a born-to-rule attitude towards it all. They can only get this job because of the family they were born into.
Yeah, but that's just part of this, 92 of the 800. But aren't all of them, none of them are elected, right?
None are elected,
Right.
But like if you become a bishop, I'm assuming not all bishops automatically become
No,
a
but
part of the House of Lords, so you're kind of elected in that sense.
no, but you're not elected by the people.
Yeah, that's true. Not
So
really.
so it's like, yeah, you don't have. There's no. It sounds like there's no checks and balances on this side of the House of Lords in general.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong on that. We're just learning about this, but that's the way it sounds on the surface, at least.
And it's not on any particular thing they've done, it's based on what their forefathers did, which, that's just not the way the world works anymore. So I think it's a real hangover from a different age.
So, ever since 2002, there have been elections for the hereditary peers. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like great news. At last, the House of Lords is finally democratic, right? Wrong. These elections have a little catch. You can only be a candidate if you're part of the elite aristocracy. All they've got to do is to write a brief personal statement, like it's university or something. That's all they've got to do to get a seat in the House of Lords. And some of those personal statements are, well, see for yourself.
I wish to come and give my support for Brexit. I have been in farming.
This lord wrote,
I wish to inherit a seat as promised in letters patent by the monarch. All my ancestors, on both sides, have served.
and, as if it's not a prerequisite, he adds,
I reside in Westminster and can attend the House of Lords.
this lord said,
Always willing to serve.
Lord Cadman didn't bother to write anything at all. And the Earl of Limerick, for his personal statement, well, you guessed it, he submitted a poem.
The upper house knows none so queer a creature as the seatless peer. Flamingo-like he stands all day, with no support to hold his sway, and waits with covert eagerness for 92 to be one less.
Just to be clear, we haven't made these up. Those people think that submitting those personal statements should be enough to secure them a seat in Parliament for life.
I don't defend the hereditary system. Obviously, you can't defend it logically. But equally, I don't apologise.
Clearly, this system is kind of
I mean, you were just
undemocratic.
born into
So
it.
can we really call the UK a democracy? And for people like the Earl of Selborne, can he really justify being in Parliament when the public has never voted for him to be there?
No one is seriously suggesting the hereditary should remain, but we will remain there until they make up their mind what they want.
What really angers people about the House of Lords is that it's not just undemocratic, it costs taxpayers loads of money. For one thing, it costs millions just to keep that building up and running. And the
that.
place has been plagued by expenses
Look
scams.
at that, man.
Most unelected peers can claim up to £305 in expenses every day just for turning up. And a few are
Every
given a full salary, complete with chauffeur-driven cars. So I came down
What?
to Westminster to meet a
Wow.
peer called Baroness de Souza. She joined the House of Lords in 2004 after being appointed by a committee, and she went on to become the Speaker. I wanted to find out about why the place has a bad reputation. I mean, you yourself have made extravagant expenses claims at times, didn't you?
No.
So when you charged £230 for a chauffeur-driven car to take you to the ballet?
Do you know how many people were in that car at that time?
How many?
5.
But so you stand by that being your own expense?
It was absolutely horrendous. I was meant to have spent £70,000 on flowers. Okay, that was accumulated over 5 years. In the end, it worked out. I spent about £10 a week. And you know, I would have thought that having a bunch of flowers in your room to cheer up distinguished visitors is kind of okay.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, but this is like the epitome of entitlement. Like, just she's like so out of touch with reality for most normal citizens.
Well, I will say here in the U.S., most politicians, whether they're in the Senate or the House, are out of touch with the average citizen. At first, they might go in, and it doesn't matter what party they're in. It doesn't matter. They get in there, and then once they're in there, they start getting together.
Get a taste of the high life.
Power and everything, and then they eventually lose track of what they originally came there for.
Not all,
most. And so I can only imagine if you literally didn't even have to get elected. You don't have to get elected to stay. There's got to be something about that just like the power that comes with that you can't just be fired by the people. You know, and again, we don't know much about this, honestly. I don't even know exactly what they have to do with laws. Like, I understand our House and the way our House and Senate works here in the U.S., but you know, and I think I have a kind of an idea of how the House of Commons works there, but the House of Lords, I'm not really sure exactly how they work with the House of Commons to pass laws and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not
What
sure
kind of input do they have? You know what I mean?
Hard to take you to the opera.
Yes,
Why did you need to show
because I had with me a Russian Speaker of the Federation Council whose security required her to drive in a special car.
Even though it was a very short distance.
Absolutely, she doesn't go by public transport, I tell you that. When I went to Windsor for a state dinner, it's quite difficult. Believe you me, you're a man, you probably don't know this, to wear a ball gown on public transport on a rainy evening and hope that there'll be a taxi there to take you up through Windsor Park. I do not accept that I was in an expensive scandal. There is so much that was not incurred. I mean, have you looked at the expenses of some other, senior politicians and senior people in various sort of local government? Have you looked at those? But compare that with what.
But this comes down to the idea of they're elected, they're accountable. People can then say, you know what, you misused your expenses, I could vote you out of office. But people like yourself can't be voted in or out of office.
When you say we're not accountable to the public, that's of course that's right, of course that's right. That said, again, I would argue that much of what the Lords does in terms of bringing up issues which are really alien to the government in the sense they don't want to address it because it's embarrassing or it's a difficult thing. Like, for instance, female genital mutilation, which for years and years and years was off the agenda. The House of Lords put it back on the agenda, amongst others. They really put it back on the agenda.
Now, we should be clear. Baroness de Souza didn't break any rules over her expenses. And she says the House of Lords is essential because of the work it does preparing legislation.
The question is, even though we are a democracy and lots of things about the UK are genuinely democratic, are we democratic enough?
The public doesn't, on the whole, think a lot about the House of Lords. I mean, when I say doesn't think a lot, they don't spend a lot of time thinking about the House of Lords. It's outside their sphere of interest. However, when it's brought before them, as it is being currently because of the political upheavals we're experiencing, I think they probably think it ought to be a democratically elected House without thinking through what the implications of that are. There was a very good census done not so long ago where the question was, do you think that the House of Lords should be democratically elected? And the answer was 95% yes. And then another question further down on the same census was, do you want more elected politicians? The answer was no. So I'm not sure that the vast majority of people don't really know what the House of Lords does.
So, is it time to change the House of Lords? Or is the UK democratic enough already?
It's a democracy on paper, but actually for very easy changes, we could make it a much richer and more meaningful and healthier democracy if we were prepared to make the changes that are so obvious to most voters who say these are the sorts of things they'd like to see changed.
So there we go. That's the House of Lords. But obviously...
All right.
So I don't know enough in depth about who the Lords specifically are.
Like what they do.
To say that one way or the other, I'm not part of UK culture. But I do see the point that the one Lord was making, the first guy, and her, when they're kind of hinting at the fact that they can push more riskier topics because they don't have to worry about, being reelected and being liked, so to speak.
Right.
So on that hand, I can see a benefit there, but I don't know how much that outweighs all the other stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to say, pretty much in any given situation, there's always positives and negatives. And so this is just our first look at the Lords in general. So like we said, we don't really know exactly what they do. So I'm not really going to take a side on this. But on the surface, it's kind of shocking to see that all these, the majority of Parliament isn't elected.
I know.
The actual majority, because, there's 800 of them. I don't know how many MPs there are, but there's quite a few. I can't remember. I remember hearing that number a while back. But, just maybe there's something good about this and we just don't know it. You know what I mean? Maybe there is something good about having this House decide that isn't elected, that is,
beneficial and needs to stay.
I don't know, guys. If you think it's beneficial in some way, let us know in the comments.
Or if you hate it,
let us know in the comments. Just on the surface, we're just kind of,
from an outside perspective.
It's so unusual to what we've known. And so it's like, wow, how can you have this entire side of the majority of your parliament not elected? But obviously it's worked. I mean, I don't know. I wish I knew exactly what they do. That's another thing I'd like to look into. If you have any ideas.
Branches of UK government and how they.
Right. I'd like to know what they have to do with laws. Like, for example, here in the U.S., if the House, passes a bill, then it'll go to the Senate, and the Senate perhaps may pass that bill, and then it would go to the president's desk to sign, right? Is that kind of the similar thing? It goes from the House of Commons, and then the House of Lords talk it over, and maybe they pass the bill as well, and then it goes to... Would it go to the prime minister to sign at that point? That's another thing I'm not really sure how it works. Because the prime minister is kind of the equivalent of the president here, I'm guessing, in a way. I know there are differences there, but...
And would the king or queen have anything to do with it?
No, the king or queen, the king now, doesn't really have anything specifically to do with passing laws, from what I understand. I'm sure I think they have sway in promoting things and whatnot, but I don't think they actually can pass laws anymore. I think that ended centuries ago, if I'm not mistaken. Let us know in the comments about that as well, guys. But I think that's it for us today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover anything and everything about the UK and Ireland. Until next time, guys. Peace.
Bye.